welcome to Brand Your Passion, the show that helps you turn the thing you love the most into something that people know and love you for. I'm your host, Holly Arnett, the brand coach for creatives, and I'm on a mission to make the world a more creative place, one brand at a time. If you're ready to get more eyes on your work, more dollars in your pocket, and more creativity in your life, you're in the right place. Welcome. Let's brand your passion. Hey everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of Brand Your Passion. I am very, very excited today to be joined by Queen of Colour, master of all things pattern, the incredible Evie Kemp. Welcome to the show, Evie.
Oh, thanks so much, Holly.
Do you want to introduce yourself to the people listening and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah. So hi everyone, I'm Evie and I am a self-employed designer, but I'm very much the multi-hyphen creative. I'm an illustrator, an artist, a designer, an interior designer. Basically anything creative that I can put my hand to, I will. So
nice.
I'm really bad at describing what I do. I've tried so many times to figure it out, but it's always bits of everything.
Yeah, I love that. I love the multi-hyphen creative is like a good catch-all to cover the many passions. Because I was interested in how you would describe what you do, because I was like, I don't even know how I would describe what Evie does.
No.
Yeah. So
I think that the principles are the same. I try and I'm just sort of applying color and pattern to everything. So there's sort of no limits on what is my canvas, whether it's a room or whether it's a picture.
I love that.
Yeah.
Amazing. So with all of those things that you do now, have you kind of always identified as a creative or an artist or a creator of some kind?
I have pretty much in my whole working life. When I first left school, I went to uni and started studying law and art history, conjoint. And so I was very much into more the theory side of art and feeling that I had the skills to do practical art. But about halfway through that, I basically had a mental breakdown and I took some time out and I just decided to apply to do graphic design.
Nice.
And at the time I thought, it was sort of the Devil Wears Prada sort of moment, thinking this is what graphic design is, and I'll go and work in magazines, and I love fashion. At the time, it was also when, blogs were really huge and everyone was into blogging. And so I guess it was sort of all tied in with that. But as I got through my degree at AUT doing graphic design, I had really great illustration tutors, and they really sort of informed my work and how I went forward. And that's pretty much sort of how I got into what I do, which I still do a lot of now, which is illustration. So that's a very long answer, but that's kind of how I got into it.
Yeah, nice. And so had you been creative as a kid at all, or did it just come through doing sort of the art history and then taking that break and realizing that's what you wanted to do? Yeah, no,
I've always been very creative as a kid, and my mum and my dad are both very creative people. They're writers, not artists, but my mum was forever doing things around the house. Our kind of outings would be going to the Natural History Museum and drawing the animals, and and I had lots of really cool sort of women in my life and my mum's friends who'd do, because I was the oldest of 5, so it always felt kind of a bit left out. It was a very busy house, so I had our next door neighbor Diane was this amazing lady, and she was an incredible cake decorator, and she'd have me over and we'd do cake decorating, and I'd sleep around her house, and she had this full on, she lived in this little cottage, and she had Laura Ashley wallpaper up and over the ceiling, matching bedding and everything patterned. And then another really good friend of my mum's, she was a photographer, and so she'd take, even as a little kid, she'd give me my own camera and we'd go out taking photos of cats in Whitby. Did you ever go to Whitby in Yorkshire?
No.
Oh,
wait, I probably have.
Yeah, you probably have.
Yeah.
And then we'd go back and develop the photos. So I was really lucky. I had lots of creative outlets to encourage me. Yeah.
That's amazing. Makes such a difference, I think, when you have, that freedom as a kid to sort of be creative and to follow those things. And even things that, you know, people, I think sometimes think of like creativity or being an artist and think of like painting or illustrating, but like, yeah, cake decorating, baking. I always think of like chefs as like artists.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, yeah, even doing those things like baking cakes and going out and taking photos of cats.
Exactly.
Is so creative. I love that. Amazing. And obviously so powerful to have those like creative women in your life too. That's amazing.
It's stuff that only sort of, you know, in the last few years I've really thought about them and what they brought to my life. And it's really special. And I try and think that, can I be that person to like kids that are in my life too, and do these cool kind of outings and craft activities.
Yeah.
I'm that auntie.
Be like, I was going to say like the fun, crafty, kooky aunt.
yeah. That's pretty much, if that could be my job description, that would be great.
Yeah. # goals. Love that. Brilliant. So since doing all that creative stuff as a kid, and then you got into actually studying to be a designer, how did you find like being at design school? That's obviously something that people struggle with or decide between, like, do I go to school? Do I try and learn on my own, or do I do something else and then just do this creative stuff on the side? Yeah. How did you find kind of the design school experience and the benefits or not benefits for you?
Yeah, that is such a good insightful question, because it's something I grapple with now when people ask me, you know, about their teenage kids, you know, would I recommend school or not? And at the time when I went and did graphic design, I was a bit older than the other people in my class because I'd already been to uni. And so I felt like I was really mission focused, I suppose, which helped. There were aspects of it that I felt were so valuable, but there was also so much that I learned either by myself and that I still continue to learn, as I'm sure you do. Like, we're always, and I think that's also the nature of graphic design, like, with so much is program based and that's always changing. So I think for me, it was really good to just have that time to focus on it and to find what I wanted to do. But I also think that if you're the right kind of person, you can do that as a self-motivated, independent person. And then also I did 3 years, and I don't know now if I would rather have done like shorter courses and things. So yeah, I did. It's like kind of hard. Like, I felt like I did waste a lot of time at uni doing some little like typography exercises that I was crap at, and that, you know, nothing gave me nothing, but then other things were really, really valuable. And I did, while I was at uni, I still took like evening classes. I did one on textile design because I really wanted to learn how to make repeat patterns, but they didn't teach that at uni. So I paid for that separately and did that. So I'm always really mixed on it. And it's really hard to know without knowing who is teaching at the course at the time. Yeah, it's really, Did you study at Massey, did you?
Yeah. And I think like it's so much to do with the course that you do choose to do as well, because looked at a few different universities. Like, I think I looked at Auckland University, and I almost went to Vic because I got a scholarship there, but the way they taught design was so different from how Massey taught design. And so I think it depends like what course you go and do and what you're looking for in like a learning experience. And I mean, I don't know how long ago you were at uni, but I think even in it's been 6 years since I left. Back then when I started, there weren't as many sort of online opportunities or courses or driven things that you could follow, whereas now there are so many, especially with like COVID, right? Everything's gone online. So there are so many workshops and webinars and classes and courses you can do that just didn't exist like 10 years ago.
That's so true. So true. I know sometimes I always get the ads for like masterclass and Skillshare. And I'm like, these look so good. These look so, so good. And if you break it down cost wise, like you could totally just plan a year of that. And then another really cool thing that maybe some people might be interested in is I found that the V&A Museum in London, they do online courses now.
Amazing.
And they look so cool. So I'm going to try and take one of those in January. They're kind of spaced out, but it's like, it's a really different approach to education, but really exciting.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like there's a Masters of Branding that Debbie Millman, who was on the podcast.
Yeah.
Is, and that's in New York. And I was like, I'm never going to get to New York. Like, it's just not like, well, maybe at some point, but not right now. It would be like, it's like a pipe dream, right? To go to New York and do this. But with COVID, they're moving that program online. And so anybody, well, not anybody, but like it's way more accessible to people all around the world. So even like tertiary degrees are moving more and more online. So it's a very, I think, exciting time to be learning. And I love the fact that like anything you want to learn is probably available online with like master classes and things like that.
Yeah, it's a lot more, despite the rising cost of university fees, like I suppose in a way, it's bringing back the fairness to education.
Yeah.
It's cool that you don't need to spend $100,000 on a fancy degree if you don't have that. And I think I'm all for that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, me too. Anything that makes creativity especially more accessible.
Yes.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
100%. Let's move on from talking about, you know, the education.
I know now.
I feel like we could talk about that forever. But when you were going through this like process of starting to be a designer and all of that stuff, when and how did you sort of start sharing that online? Were you already doing that? Was it a conscious decision? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so pretty much like the beginnings of Instagram happened around the same time that I was leaving uni, really. So I'd been on Twitter a lot, and I'd made a really good community of creative friends through that. So everyone sort of had a market stall. It was one of those, you know, like all those markets, like the Auckland one and the like Crafternoon Tea and stuff like that. Yeah. So I had all these friends that were making different things, and we'd chat on Twitter, and it was great. And then Instagram came up around the same time as I was kind of doing my final year uni, so I was sharing stuff through there. And it was pretty much even through those heavily filtered, terrible photos that I got that I was promoting my business, and I got my first stockist, who was the wonderful Martha from Wanda Harland in Wellington. And she's still a really, really good friend of mine today. And so I kind of used it from the very beginning, which I think works in my favor, but I never imagined it would become sort of so integral to my brand and my business. But it sort of meant that I didn't come with a brand and start an Instagram account. I started with an Instagram account and made a brand. So yeah, it kind of makes it a bit easier that way. But
I'm super interested in how people do that, because I think some people do just like start posting on Instagram and then they're like, oh, I should probably like figure out how to build a brand or something. And then some people do the opposite, like you just said, right? They're like, okay, I have this brand and I'm going to start trying to grow this and use Instagram as a way to do that. So how did you, when and how did you sort of realize like, okay, I'm going to try and turn this into a brand and build this thing?
Pretty much just before I'd left uni, I'd kind of decided. So for my final exhibition, I'd done these fabrics and I'd put the pictures on Instagram, and all my, 30 followers were like, oh my God, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Gave me that boost. And like I said, Martha from Wanda Harland had said, like, would you want to sell them? And then I signed up and did a market. And as soon as I left uni, I worked at the New Zealand Herald as a Mac operator. So for anyone who is not that old, a Mac op is just, you're pretty much just the hands moving the pieces around. So I was just making all the adverts for the Herald and all their regional papers, which was a really good job in terms of experience, becoming quite efficient, but not very creative. So while I was doing that, I was always kind of itching like to get back to my fabric stuff. So I had a little online shop on felt, which was like the New Zealand version.
Yeah.
And then I also had stuff on Etsy as well. And I was just kind of posting it there. And at the time I was doing, fabrics, and they were too expensive and I couldn't really sell them. And so then I turned them into paper prints and they just kind of went off. So I just basically became a print shop for my own designs.
Amazing.
Yeah. And at the time, I was printing, over 1,000 prints a month.
Wow.
Like that. And I had my own print. I bought my own printers off Trade Me, and I was just kind of packaging and printing, and I did that for years and years and years and years. Like really, it was probably about 5 or 6 years I did that, and that was my bread and butter business.
Yeah. Wow. And so how did you decide that you were going to expand or change that sort of what you were doing? Like if that was your whole thing, doing the prints?
Well, it was a two-way thing. One, sales just dropped. It just became a more saturated market, and it was just harder to get the sales. I hadn't created enough new work. I was really depending on my old work and just reproducing it. And I wasn't very happy in myself because I wasn't being creative again. I was actually just a sort of packing, dispatching machine. But also because I've been using my Instagram to share what I was passionate about, that kind of opened up some other avenues for work for me. So it kind of coincided with that. It was just sort of like that I could sort of switch tracks, you know?
Yeah.
quite
just kind of slide over.
Slide over. So then I decided to call it quits on my prints completely, so like a clean break, and then I could focus on other stuff. So then I was doing more sort of event styling and interior styling, and
wicked. And so you were doing this part-time at this point?
Oh, with work, I was doing it part-time. So I was working full-time, but then I went down to 4 days a week, and then went down to 3 days a week, and then went down to 2 days a week.
Nice.
And then when I was secure enough, I left. I had an amazing boss at Herald who was really just keen to have me there when I could be there, and was worked out perfectly. You know, that's a really lucky situation to be in.
Yeah, that's so great to have a boss who's like, yes, please go, take the days off and follow your dreams.
I think he was more like, please just work here at least 1 day a week. Then, then at least we'll get 1 day out of you rather than none.
It was like, okay, you're going to leave, but we're going to keep you as much as
basically, which that was fine, worked out fine.
Yeah, awesome. So at what point did you sort of start having like a logo and branding and stuff? I assume you did that when you were selling your prints, but tell me about like, how you originally like did that, and then how it's changed over time, because I know you have just kind of done a new logo.
I have.
So tell me a little bit about like the evolution of the Evie brand.
Okay, it's a pretty slow evolution because I was working out. It's been I probably did my first logo for myself about 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And it just said Evie Kemp in Caviar Dreams. Do you know that typeface? It's like it's a really rounded fine line sans serif.
Oh yeah, I think I know. It was very of
the time. So I just had that in lowercase Evie Kemp, and it really, I suppose when I look at it now, I'm like, oh, I had no connection, but I really liked stamping my name all over everything. I still got the stamp of that one, and I had these little. It was so. I think at that time, I've never been a branding expert in any way. So it was really just sort of taking bits from things I liked. So at the time I got all these really thin plywood blank business cards and I stamped my logo on them.
Cool.
And I was like, these are so cool, but they cost me so much money. I'm not giving them to anyone. So I still got some. I only had like 100 to start with.
Nice.
Then when I sort of started getting a bit more into it again, then I switched to a hand-drawn logo, just kind of my name in scratchy letters on a sort of colourful shape background. And that felt a lot more me because most of my work involves my own kind of hand drawing, and it's quite kind of scratchy and bold. So I felt like, okay, this is getting somewhere. But it wasn't really until my latest iteration where I felt like, okay, I think this is really me. This is really going somewhere. So I went to art camp last February before the world shut down.
Yeah.
Which was talking about education again, such a fun time. And one of the activities at art camp was a branding workshop with Rose from Mooma. And just in that hour, I think because I'd never done branding at uni and I was only just really like, oh, I just need something pretty to stick on my stuff. I'd never actually sat down and thought about it. Like subsequently, of course, now I listen to this podcast and it gets my thinking heaps. And so that really helped too. So that started me thinking about what my branding and what my logo specifically needed to look like to express me and what my brand is. So yeah, I think I'm there. I'm really excited about it, but I'm a bad brander because I haven't really applied it to anything else yet.
That's all right. Step one, you've done step one.
The
hardest step, which is actually designing the thing. Yeah. How did you know that it was like time to have a new logo or to kind of step into a new evolution?
Yeah, it's because I pretty much just ditched my old logo ages ago. I changed my website to just have my name in a font, like just in a web font. So I just wasn't feeling it. So I knew the time was right, but it's taken me like 2 years to actually make one.
Yeah.
So this might not be the advice that people come on for. No, but
it's the reality, right?
Yeah, it's the reality. It's like that whole thing, isn't it? Like a builder's house is never done and a designer's brand is never done. No, I think it was just having the right inspirations for it. So, firstly that workshop with Rose, and then like I said, like listening to your podcast and following you online has been really influential for me for the last year, and it's really got me thinking like really big stuff. I mean it. And even though I'm a bit lazy and I don't always put it into practice, it's there ticking away in my head.
Well, that's all I can ask for.
But I also just feel like there's so much value in what you say and what you offer. And, sometimes you just need to hear things 1,000 times for it to click in your head and to realize, I have so many people say, like friends, and they're well-meaning, and they say to me, nobody knows what you do. Like nobody knows what you actually do for work or how to work with you or what you're about. And I suppose this is kind of my first step in dealing with that.
Yeah. Nice. It's a brave step.
Thank you.
I love it. Yeah. And what made you decide to like do the logo yourself? Is it just because like you are a graphic designer, so you have that capabilities, or you wanted to be involved, or what? Yeah. Tell me what that decision was.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've had other brands in the past, like I've had collabs and I've hired a designer to do a logo, and then I just ended up redoing it myself, which felt so rude. But like I think it is just that it's that essence that you feel in yourself that makes you think I can figure this out. And I think that was just where I was at. And because it was such a sort of up in the air, floaty thing, I couldn't really give anyone a brief for it. It just had to happen, which is also why it was so slow. I sort of feel now like the stage where I'm at, where I feel like, okay, I feel like I found my tone and set my tone, that now it would be good to probably work with someone else to develop it, to flesh it out.
Right.
Because I feel like I'm much more on the art side and less on the design side. So I definitely, you know what you're good at and you know what you're not good at. And it's always cool to work with people who are good at what they're good at.
And I guess you have that sort of creative director styling skill. So you have done that kind of part of it of like, okay, this is the vision, this is the creative direction. And then, somebody else can go and like implement that and expand on it and things like
exactly.
that. So.
Ideally.
I
think I love seeing people when they develop their brand or they change their brand like you have just recently, and it's really, and I loved how in that previous episode how you talked about why and how, and I think that's really valuable for people, because so many of us have actually been doing this for years and years, and we can get really stuck in our ways. And the world keeps moving on, and we suddenly go, hold on, this has nothing to do with what I'm doing. Like people will look at that and think, what's that got to do with it? But so it's really cool to think of it as an ever-evolving process.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's like when you are so close to it and so in it, that it can be hard to see that sometimes, that either it's not making sense or it's, it's not clear or it doesn't relate or whatever. Like when you're so in the weeds of it, it's hard to see like the big forest, right? So you sometimes need somebody from outside to give you that perspective of like, hey, you should probably think about this.
I know. You sort of think like you can spend 100 hours looking at it, and then you'll have a branding expert spend 2 hours and say, I know exactly what you need to do.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh yeah.
Yes, makes sense.
but it's cool. It's fun. I think branding should be fun, and it should feel, most importantly, it should feel like something that you're really proud to share with the world.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's there for, and that's what we need to do with it. It's no good if it's something you tuck away at the back of your website or on a pile of old business cards that you keep in a cupboard. we want it to be something really cool that people resonate with and are drawn to, and that's the fun of it. It is a really fun thing.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I love it. And speaking of evolution, so obviously your logo is like one part of your brand and the whole experience, but especially on Instagram and online, your actual work that you share and the style of that is such a big part of your brand, right? And what people think about when they think of you, or what the feeling is that they get when they arrive on your profile and things like that. So tell me a little bit about how like your style or your work has changed over time, because I know you recently shared a picture of you like quite a while ago with like different like fashion style completely, and like your interior style has changed a lot over time. So yeah, tell me a little bit about your style evolution and how that's changed over time.
Yeah, I think I've just become super, super maximalist. And I think that's just that's kind of just age and becoming really comfortable and more confident in myself. I think having a really cool online community has been such a massive part of that as well, just in terms of feeling like you've found your people and they inspire you and you feel like you can inspire them, and you don't have to fit in a mold or try and fit in or try and create something that everybody likes. That's always like my key kind of saying. It's like you want to be like Marmite, either people either hate it or they love it.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to get everyone just to like it, then nobody cares. So I think it's just like being more Marmite in life and sharing all the parts of it. I've gone through phases of trying to sort of be more niche and edit down my profile in terms of, people say you've got to kind of stick to one thing or you'll lose people. But I don't. And maybe I think my follower count probably has suffered for that. But ultimately, I'm true to myself, and the people that follow me hopefully enjoy the fact that I do share all different things. Sometimes it might be fashion, sometimes it's clothing, sometimes it's art, sometimes it's books, sometimes it's body positivity, sometimes it's not often food, but it could be anything. I suppose it could be anything. Yeah,
totally. I was going to ask you about how you found sort of building a brand when you are sort of multi-passionate and multi-creative, because I know that so many people, myself included, have so many different passions and so many different creative things that they do. I told Fem, who was on the podcast, that I wish I had like 9 lives like a cat. So I could live like 9 different creative lives, because I feel like in another lifetime, I would want to be like a musician or a singer. And in another lifetime, I would love to be like a novelist, like a fantasy novelist, like in another life, I just want to have all these creative lives. But yeah, I was just curious about how you found that kind of experience of building a brand when you have so many different passions, and what you've sort of done to tie it all together, I guess.
I've had a lot of struggle with it, because sometimes I feel that, I could be so much more successful if I focused on one thing, rather than being a jack of all trades, master of none, which is kind of how I feel I am. But I usually just come back to the fact that I can't stick to one thing. I get bored or something catches my eye and I do it. And how lucky am I to get to have all these passions and have them all part of my job? And I just don't think that my brain would work that I could do it any other way. So I listened to, oh gosh, I should remember her name. Maybe I'll find it for you after. But I was listening to a podcast just the other day with someone who is like us, like has lots of different creative things. And they asked her this question, and she said, I do have a thing. And my thing is joy.
Yeah.
That covers everything. And I thought that was a really good answer.
Yeah,
she was American, so obviously. I'm like, I don't know if I could say that. But, you know, like if you think that if you approach everything with the same gusto, then it all sort of fits together in its own way. So yeah.
I mean, I think like when I think about you, like I said at the beginning, I'm not sure how I would describe like exactly the million things that you do. But I feel like when I think of Evie, I think of like the feeling of Evie, if that makes sense.
It's like, I hope it's a good feeling, not like,
like
I've got a headache.
No, definitely a good thing. Like in terms of just like I guess your style is a part of it. Like even though you do so many different things, there's like a consistent, while very varied, like a consistent sort of style and feeling that ties all of them together.
Yeah.
I think.
And I think that's probably the thing that once I accepted that, that's the thread that holds everything together. And so is being true to my own voice and not trying to think I want to do this like this person or I want to do that like that person. It's just, I can only, if I do everything as myself, then everything should sort of mesh together somehow.
Yeah. I love that. Amazing. I also just quickly I was scrolling through your Instagram yesterday just to like think of questions and what I wanted to talk to you about, and I read that you posted that you got a D in color theory at design school because you failed design according to the tutor, which I just think is so funny that like now you that's your whole thing. It's like color and pattern and bringing that all together, and now you can sort of like, like you're just saying,
badge of honor for me now.
Yeah. You're like, I stay true to my voice, which is apparently wrong to you. So you're definitely living that Marmite life.
I stopped doing art at high school as well because my teacher wouldn't let me. We'd go to the museum and draw like Māori artifacts and things, and I was putting sort of pink where there wasn't pink, and she was just like, I don't know, I can't remember exactly what she said, but she basically crushed my spirit and I quit doing art.
No.
for years. So she'd done that, and then I did this stupid color theory thing, which was the thing I was most excited for at uni, and I failed that as well. So now I'm like, but color's subjective. Nobody can tell you that you're good or bad at color. If you like it, then you like it. If it works, and grades be damned.
Yeah, showed you.
He was the tutor. Anyone who went to AUT will have had this experience, and you had to paint like a really long strip of all colours next to each other, and he reckoned that you could read it like music, and he would be in class going dum dee dum 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 dum, like up and down the scale of how he read the colours. So obviously it's like mine was like a horrible song.
Oh no. Oh gosh.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So, but as we wrap things up, one last question. What kind of is either the biggest lesson that you've learned about branding your passion, or a piece of advice that you would give to somebody else, other creatives who are branding their passion?
Oh, okay. I should have thought about this. I think one of the best things was when I switched to deciding I wanted to be a designer, my mum gave me a card and it had the quote, we must do what we love or we risk doing nothing at all. And I always hold that dear to me. And I always think when you're branding your passion, you've got to stay in your lane and focus on what matters to you, what appeals to you. And if you love it, then that will reflect through. I think it's got to be that being true to yourself and being unafraid to find your own voice and to push your own boundaries, because I do think that's when the magic happens. Yeah, so I think that would probably be my advice.
Beautiful. I love that. What a great card from your mum.
I know. What a sweetheart.
What a gem. I love it. Awesome. Okay, so do you want to tell people where they can find you? Obviously, it will all be linked down below and everything, but tell them where they can find you and how they can work with you or buy something from you or support you right now.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So obviously I'm on Instagram all the time, and I am at Evie Kemp on there. I'm also Evie Kemp on Pinterest, which I'm hanging out on more and more. And my website is eviekemp.com. And on there, I've also recently launched an ebook called Much, which is all about living a kind of maximalist life. And it's got lots of practical tips as well as just inspirational things. And I think I personally wrote it for anyone who feels like they just want to bring a bit more into their life and find themselves a bit freer in design. It doesn't matter if you don't want to be full-blown, Iris Apfel. You can there's ways to tell a story through your home, and that's what that book's all about. So that's on my website, and I also have a selection of prints because I did come back to prints and they are on my website as well. So yeah.
Wonderful. Well, everybody make sure you go and check out all those goodies. I cannot wait till I have my own home and I can start plastering wild wallpaper and colours everywhere.
Yes. So I have just spotted you've got an amazing French Bulldog head mounted on your wall.
Yes. People won't, well, this is hard to do backwards. There, yeah. People won't be able to see that in the podcast, but yeah.
They can imagine it. They're like, what? Oh my gosh, you text a Bulldog?
It's not real. It's one of those, it's the downfalls of branding actually, is that everybody in my life knew that I loved French Bulldogs and dogs in general. And so birthday presents, Christmas presents for a good few years, which is all dog related, which I'm not that mad about, but it just my whole house now is basically full of things like that. So be careful what you wish for when it comes to your branding, because you could be overwhelmed. Oh gosh. Well, yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that I have learned a lot and had just a great time hearing your experience and your approach. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure all the people listening will really love to hear it too. So we appreciate you.
Oh, well, thanks so much for all the work you do and all your help. And thanks for having me on.
Of course. All right. See you next time, everybody. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Brand Your Passion and choosing to spend time with me learning all about branding, business, and all things creativity. You can find more episodes just like this one at makerandmoxie.com/podcast. If you like this one, you can tap that subscribe or follow button so that you're notified about each and every new episode. And if you've got a spare second, please leave a review on iTunes or wherever it is that you're listening to this podcast, because I would absolutely 100% love to hear from you. If there were some helpful goodies in this episode for you, it would mean the world to me as well if you could screenshot that podcast player right now, hop on over to Instagram or Twitter and tag us at Maker and Moxie. By subscribing, reviewing, and sharing, you're helping reach more creators just like you, so that together we can make the world a more creative place, one brand at a time. We can't achieve this mission without you, so your support means the absolute world. I will talk to you in the next episode, but until then, keep creating.